I think it's safe to say that the entire first round of fantasy football drafts this year went utterly wrong. So today, we're actually going to correct that. We're going to go ahead and redraft the entire first round of fantasy football drafts, plus get midway into the second round as well. Ty, we'll take turns alternating here. We'll treat this like an actual fantasy football draft. We've had a chance to compare notes beforehand, but I think it's still going to be a fun conversation in terms of where we might have different players ranked, how our boards looked in its entirety. But I'll give you the first overall pick here. If you had the 101 in fantasy football drafts this year with what you knew today, who would be the first pick?
It would be Jonathan Taylor. There is a very good argument for who I believe you will be taking with the second pick. So I won't spoil that just yet. But the reason why I think Jonathan Taylor is the 101 at this point is with Indy being the highest fantasy scoring offense in the league this year, and most of that being driven by Jonathan Taylor. Like, we have 3 games with 3 rushing touchdowns from Jonathan Taylor. It's hard to beat regardless of format, regardless of the receiving work that other players may be getting here. Jonathan Taylor has been the best player so far in fantasy football, being on the best offense so far this year.
The big thing about this Indianapolis Colts offense is that they're actually getting to the red zone. And when they're in the red zone, it's Jonathan Taylor who's getting the football. 13 rush attempts inside of the 5-yard line for Jonathan Taylor this year. He's converted 5 of those into touchdowns. Both of those are more than any other running back in the league. Now, the other thing I do want to make sure I mention is that, yes, we're redrafting based off of the first 7 weeks of the season, but we're also looking ahead to the final 10 weeks as well and how these rankings could hold. So in terms of Jonathan Taylor's hot start, you also think the Colts offense can stay this hot and project to still be this hot throughout the rest of the season.
I do. When the offense has yet to really slow down and they are playing some really efficient ball. And again, Jonathan Taylor is playing some of the best ball that we have seen. I have a hard time believing that it's going to slow down. Sure, like they could finish more top 5 than the number 1 scoring fantasy offense. Right. But at that point, like, we've built so much credit, we've built up so much already through 7 games so far that it may not make a difference at the end.
Believe I heard it on the Underdog Football Show with Josh and Hayden as well, that Jonathan Taylor leads the league in yards carries that have gone for 20 plus miles per hour that he's reached on those runs as well, which is no small thing. So not only is he plowing it in around the goal line, but he's showing off the juice as well, getting small in between the tackles, bursting through, ripping off some massive gains as well. Before we continue through the draft, though, want to make sure, if you aren't subscribed to our channel yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell as well, so you know when all of our newest content is up. Our goal is, yes, to provide you the insights that I'm using to beat Ty's using to beat me, making sure that we definitely beat Cameron as well, but we want to remind you of the fun and camaraderie that comes with the game of fake football. If you listen to our starts and sits episode last week, that was one of the classic episodes that you're just like, right, fantasy football is supposed to be fun and full of laughter and joy along the way as well. So we want to make sure you get your dose of that as well, along with the insights you need to beat your friends at fantasy football. I'll take the second pick here, Ty. I think it's pretty consensus across the top 3-4 picks here. You can probably have them in any order, but this is where I am going to take Christian McCaffrey as the second overall pick in drafts this year. We were saying it at the start of the season, don't draft scared. Christian McCaffrey, wide receiver 3 in targets, wide receiver 3 in receptions, wide receiver 6 in yards. And no, I'm not mistakenly calling Christian McCaffrey a wide receiver, though I might as well be, because those are his actual receiving stats in comparison to the wide receiver position this year. He is giving you wide receiver 1 usage at the running back position so far this year. He is averaging 27.7 expected fantasy points per game, Ty. That is 6.6 expected more points per game than Jonathan freaking Taylor, who is in second place, 21.1 expected points per game. Now just wait till the efficiency comes back in the run game, right? Because Christian McCaffrey actually has 1 more rushing attempt on the season than Jonathan Taylor. So if we get more weeks like week 7 in the ground game, obviously you're going to get George Kittle back in this passing attack as well. You're going to get Ricky Pierce all healthy, but if they're going to continue using Christian McCaffrey at this rate, Ty, I mean, there's literally no reason why he can't finish RB1 overall again this year.
No, seriously, like it is on another level this year. And like for being on the 101, like CMC is the 101 train at the beginning of the year, I'm going to admit, I did not think you could get to like this kind of level of
This
stuff.
good.
Right.
This level of receiving. Yeah.
The thing that kind of held him back over the first like 4 or 5 games was like you said, was the rushing production. But this past week against Atlanta, we got it. Plus the receiving work.
Plus the receiving work.
That combination is deadly. So I couldn't agree more. It's really like you could have CMC 101 and JT 102. I will have zero gripes about it. But I take the chances of JT's rushing production continuing rather than Christian McCaffrey's rushing production maintaining throughout the year.
I mean, looking ahead to the rest of the season, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if you wanted to put the third player on our board here in the conversation for RB1 overall rest of season as well. Because third pick, you're taking Bijan Robinson.
I think Bijan is the pretty clear 103 at this point. With the wide receiver landscape as it has played out so far this year, kind of just in flux and constantly rotating because of injuries or because of quarterback play and all those kind of things, you have to just look at Bijan Robinson and go, that's not only the right and safe pick here, but he's the next guy up here that can give you those like super high weekly ceilings. And you've seen what Atlanta has done this year compared to what they did last year with Kirk Cousins under center, is that this offense has gone even more in on Bijan Robinson being the focal point of their offense. Everything is driven and based off of the run game. You can't get the run game going. Michael Penix really, really struggles with the passing game. And that's what we saw against Carolina. And that's why Carolina ultimately shut him out 30-0, right? But then we have the games against Buffalo where Bijan Robinson goes absolutely nuclear and Atlanta plays arguably their best game of the year. So again, it's pretty straightforward for me. Yes, 3 running backs at the top may sound wild when, again, you have the big name receivers, but so far how the year has played out and how I'm expecting things to continue on throughout the year, these guys are the definition of of workhorses that will not move or change at all.
I mean, when you don't have a Christian McCaffrey who's the wide receiver 3, literally the wide receiver 3 in targets, like you look at Bijan Robinson's usage in the receiving game, 7 targets, 5, 6, 5, now back-to-back games with 8 targets. He has multiple games with 100 receiving yards this year. Bijan Robinson does. It's just silly, right? It's silly what these running backs can do, right? So I would agree. I think Bijan does slot in at 3 here after week 7 against San Francisco. But again, rest of season, can we get more games like this from Bijan Robinson if they continue to just consolidate this offense to Bijan Robinson, Drake London in the passing attack? I mean, I think you're looking at RB1, 2, and 3 here rest of season when the standings are all said and done.
I completely agree. If Bijan Robinson wasn't getting the passing or the receiving work that he's getting, if he's not lining up in the slot, which I have to say, whenever you see Bijan Robinson line up in the slot, you're like, where the ball's going. It's going to number 7. Okay. If he wasn't getting that level of receiving work, he would definitely be closer to the rest of the running backs that we're going to talk about today. But because again, he is focal point of the offense, just like McCaffrey and JT is, and the receiving work that, you rarely find at the running back position. Like, yeah, for what feels like the 9th time, like this is what feels the most correct, the most right at this point.
RB3 in expected fantasy points per game this year at 18.3 points per game. So these are the top 3 running backs in fantasy football this year and likely will be the rest of the season. I'm going to start breaking away from the running back position here. I think you do have to take Puka Nacua with the 4th overall pick here. His 17-game pace through the first 5 weeks, it is absolutely nutty. Like, just listen. Please listen intentionally. Pause what you are doing and turn your listening ears on, boys and girls. 210 targets, 176 receptions for 1 yard shy of 2,000 yards. That's Puka Nakua's 17-game pace through the first 5 weeks. Now, obviously, he gets hurt in week 6. That's a bummer. That's literally the only thing that keeps Puka Nacua from being in like the first overall pick conversation here. All of those would have set single season NFL records, let alone obviously the Triple Crown, right? Would have been his for sure this year, but those would have set all time single season NFL records. Again, it's the ankle injury. We're pretty sure he's going to come back in week 9 after the Rams a week 8 bye, but I don't know, man. Puka Nacua, I think he for sure lock and loaded wide receiver 1 rest of season.
I think a lot of people will hear the Puka Nacua wide receiver 1 argument and go like, well, what about like, again, the other big name receivers? Like, why aren't those guys the number 1 option here, or the first receiver here off the board? Honestly, don't let recency bias fool you. That's the only thing that I can say, because yes, we've seen some bigger games come in without Puka Nacua active, but when Puka has been healthy this year, it is like Cooper Kupp-esque in that role that is just volume PPR scamming his way and then finding the end zone every once in a while. Like it is something to behold, and that's a cheat code. Again, when I was talking about with Jonathan Taylor and Bijan, with the wide receiver landscape just constantly rotating, evolving because of quarterback play, injuries, all that kind of stuff. Sometimes you need to just kind of take the most consistent thing, the thing that you can rely on and bank on the most, and that is Puka Nacua in the Sean McVay offense this year.
Puka Nacua was averaging 2.6 more points per game than the wide receiver 2 through the first 5 weeks. Amon-Ra St. Brown was averaging 19 points per game. And that was with like a 30-point explosion in there as well. So obviously inflates things slightly. That's not a diss on Amon-Ra St. Brown. We all know he's due for those games, obviously. But just something to keep in mind how dominant Puka Nacua actually was through the first 5 weeks. I mean, you even look at the wide receiver 3. Emeka Egbuka was averaging 18 points per game. That's 3.6 more per game. Rome Odunze, wide receiver 4, 17.4. That's 4 more points per game. Jackson Smith-Njigba, wide receiver 5 more points per game. 15.3 for Jackson Smith-Njigba, or 16.3 for JSN, excuse me. Point being, Puka Nacua, really good at the football. And for the ankle injury, I think we would be considering him potentially in the Bijan Robinson or Puka Nacua conversation there. I mentioned Amon-Ra St. Brown, also on a heater through those first 5 weeks. Actually not the player you're going with here at number 5, though.
No, I'm not. I'm actually going with Ja'Marr Chase. And I think a lot of people will think that this is probably a little too low for Ja'Marr Chase on the back of 2 really, really good games with Joe Flacco, and go, well, if we know that this is what we can give with Ja'Marr Chase, why shouldn't he be higher when you did take him as the 101 in your actual drafts? In the point, real
101 to 105 ain't that bad of a drop. Like,
I'm just like,
just be honest about that.
Just keep it in perspective here, guys. Okay, like this is
right. Compared to other players that we may or may not mention in this video.
A 4-pick difference, and wide receiver 1 to wide receiver 2, like we're splitting hairs at that point. The reason why I've got Ja'Marr Chase behind Puka and then down here at number 5 is, yes, we should be getting slightly better quarterback play, and that's what we have seen in the last 2 games. I'm expecting a decrease, and this is what we've seen through 2 weeks also, a decrease in the downfield looks in the big plays. Not saying that they're completely going to go away now with Joe Flacco under center, but the amount of them that we get this year, I think, is going to take a hit. It obviously took a hit when you lost Joe Burrow and you went to Jake Browning, but because you went out and got Joe Flacco, yes, you can now kind of volume and PPR scam your way to being a top 5 pick by year's end based on, fantasy finish and all that stuff. But we're not going to get those kind of big explosive plays. Like I think back to, I guess that was last year, Thursday Night Football against Baltimore, where he went for like nearly 200 yards.
Exactly
and all that.
The game I was thinking of. Yep.
I don't think we're going to get many of those games. And we got close to it this past week against Pittsburgh, but that's on the back of 16 catches and 23 targets, right? So you do need the volume. The volume at least will be there, but because of the decrease in the bigger plays, that's ultimately why I would give the nod to Puka and then the 3 other running backs ahead of Ja'Marr.
Yeah, don't hear what I'm not saying when I'm about to say this. The perk of having Joe Flacco at quarterback now, who's a competent thrower of the football, is that this offense is entirely consolidating to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. They're removing the tight end usage out of it. It's literally going to be, if Joe Flacco is going to drop back 40 times a game, Jamar Chase might average 15 targets a game the rest of the season. Obviously an exaggeration a little bit there, but like Jamar Chase, there's zero reason why he shouldn't be averaging double-digit targets per game rest of season. If this Bengals defense is still as bad as they are, if Joe Flacco's not afraid to let the football rip around the yard like we saw on Thursday Night Football, this offense is consolidating to its two best playmakers, which is Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Now imagine if we do get that classic T. Higgins 3-game absence at some point during the season, Jamar Chase might literally draw 30 targets in that game. I mean, right. And again, you're not getting the explosive look at the 60-yard touchdown down the sideline, but what you are going to get is high volume PPR. You can't even say PPR scam because Jamar Chase is well above a PPR scam, but
true.
But point being, the volume is going to be there rest of season because of how this offense is consolidating under Joe Flacco. 6th pick, Ty. Oh, yeah, one more thing you want to chime in with?
No.
Nope. You looked like you were eager to add something else, but
I thought I did, and I was like, nah, but we can just move on.
We'll keep it moving here. I think people might be upset with this pick. I really understand it. I am still going CeeDee Lamb at the 6th pick. 4-game absence. It's tough. I say this as a fellow CeeDee Lamb manager who has been sunk by his injury through the first 7 weeks. In my longest running home league that I talk all the smack I possibly can in that league, I'm in last place. I also drafted James Conner and Rashee Rice in that league. So I was already sunk from the get-go. I also drafted Chase Brown in that league. That's to say, hey, I can draft in perfect. I'm not saying I'm the perfect fantasy football analyst by any means, but I get it. I empathize with you all CeeDee Lamb managers where through the first 7 weeks, you're like, what in the world did I get myself into here? My guess is that if you are a CeeDee Lamb manager and the rest of your team is held together, you're probably not sitting in last place like I am. My guess is that you're definitely missing the playoffs right now. But if there's anything that we've learned from the first 7 weeks of the season about this Dallas Cowboys team, is that we are literally going to get a top 3 wide receiver rest of the season from CeeDee Lamb. He's had 110 plus yards in all 3 fully healthy games this year. In his absence, George Pickens was the wide receiver 1 overall in half PPR formats. He scored 5 touchdowns during that stretch. The Cowboys defense is so bad that they are going to be chasing points more weeks than not, unless if they play the Commanders and jump on them early and blow them out 44-22. But still, CeeDee Lamb had a great game. George Pickens had a great game. This is the 2024 Bengals all over again. We could get Jamar Chase out of CeeDee Lamb. That is the upside case that I'm chasing here. This is me just having complete confidence that you are going to have one of the most elite fantasy assets on a team that is literally designed to feed your team fantasy points. It's a high-octane passing attack with a piss-poor defense that can't get off the field, and that's going to equal a gold mine for fantasy points for you. So I am saying, hey, I get it. It's been so tough, but CeeDee Lamb, I think, is going to be a top 3 wide receiver asset rest of season. And I'm not saying he's going to compete with Puka Nacua because Puka Nacua is doing absolutely stupid things this year. We got a lucky break with Jamar Chase getting Joe Flacco under center, but this just screams 2024 Bengals all over again, where CeeDee Lamb is the Jamar Chase and George Pickens is the T. Higgins.
Yep, Colts are the highest scoring fantasy offense this year. Dallas is right behind them at number 2.
Number 2, yep.
And the most receiving fantasy points this year belongs to the Dallas Cowboys. They will go, this offense is high octane and will be able to support CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Jake Ferguson, and Javonte Williams. That's the beauty of this. Now, yes. CeeDee Lamb, I think the case here is probably the one case where I kind of want to ask people to just kind of ignore what we have seen so far piece of this, even though, like, again, we've tried to take the whole approach.
Yes.
But we're just saying, like, if you were to redraft and maybe you didn't know that injuries were going to happen, you knew that they could happen, but you didn't know where they were going to hit or if someone was going to get injured or not, I think you would still take CeeDee Lamb at number 3. Because if you knew that this Dallas offense was going to be high powered enough in a top 3 fantasy scoring offense, you would still give the nod to CeeDee Lamb over some other receivers. Now we're going to bring up some other receivers and you go, really? Like you're going to literally the next pick that we're going to talk about, which is my pick. Like you're going to question it, but I really hope that people can look past again the 3-game absence that he had in the game that he left early against Chicago and just go, look, this Dallas offense is for real for fantasy, and I'm ready. I you know the ceiling that we're gonna get most weeks with these pass catchers is gonna be it's gonna feed generations.
Yeah, and again, holistic approach here. I get it. 4 games without an elite asset like CeeDee Lamb is not fun. I get how you would want to dock that down. I'm telling you, you're going to get a top 3 wide receiver rest of season. That's how freaking good this Dallas Cowboys offense is going to be for fantasy football this year. And CeeDee Lamb is going to be the focal point of that. Another wide receiver off the board here, Ty. That now makes it 4 wide receivers in a row. Who's your selection to be?
It's Amon-Ra St. Brown. Really kind of the focal point of this Detroit offense this year. Because let's keep it real. Detroit's run offense has been good this year. It's just it has not been at the same level as it has in years past. And because of that, they've had to rely on Amon-Ra St. Brown a little bit more in the red zone. And that was, yes, like in 2023, we had 10 touchdowns, 24, we had 12 touchdowns. But the pace that we're at for touchdowns right now and the volume maintaining here, that gives me confidence to continue to at least look at Amon-Ra St. Brown as a mid first round pick versus before the season, he was kind of a fringe first round guy because you're like, I'm just not sure what this Detroit offense is going to look like without Ben Johnson now. It took a minute to get going, but now that it has got going, Amon-Ra St. Brown has been one of the best receivers. And again, he's been one of the more consistent pieces in this ever-evolving wide receiver landscape. And I think you have to value that at some point when, yes, there may be some guys that have higher ceilings, even though I know like Amon-Ra St. Brown had his like 3 touchdown game against Chicago and gave you 34 points. Like that's kind of cream of the crop stuff right there. But like you have to value the consistency that Amon-Ra St. Brown gives you. I feel kind of dumb that we kind of ignored that at the beginning of the year, that we kind of followed along with consensus a little bit that said like, hey, he's kind of an end of the first round guy. And it's like, no, well, wait a minute. Like, what if this team continues to really value Amon-Ra St. Brown and they kind of make him the guy? Again, crazy what if scenario, but it's paying off right now. And you can, and it results in a mid first round pick in a redraft here.
Well, and I want to be careful about how we pitch that too, because think about the guys who we were taking ahead of him. It was Nico Collins, who was pacing to be the wide receiver 1 overall at some point last year. You also had Malik Neighbors, who everyone was projecting to take a giant sophomore leap. Brian Thomas Jr. is the one who was being drafted in the same range as Amon-Ra, and you were kind of flip-flopping between those 2 guys. But like, it was Nico and Malik Neighbors. And like, I don't know if the process was outright bad on that.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think the process was bad, but I think you bring up a phenomenal point that, you know what, Amon-Ra St. Brown, instead of being in the 10, 11, 12 conversation, maybe he should always be in the 7, 8, 9 conversation instead, right? And I think that's just a helpful thing to keep in mind, where we know how good he is as a football player. We know the caliber of offense that the Detroit Lions possess. Maybe we should just continue to value that and the consistency above all else, and maybe not chase wide receiver 1 Malik Neighbors, wide receiver 1 Nico Collins, where that's in their upside. That was in their upside going into this year. So we thought, so we projected. They displayed that at some point last year. But Amon-Ra St. Brown has been the most stable one, obviously. I mean, even in a game against the Chiefs where he only had 45 receiving yards, still caught 9 of 10 targets in that game. So clearly the focal point. This is being recorded before Monday Night Football as well. So you're going to be listening to this after the Bucs performance, where, hey, that game's projected for 52.5 total points. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Amon-Ra St. Brown gives you another phenomenal game. And, you know, hindsight, again, without this Monday Night Football game, would it be enough to potentially boost him ahead of CeeDee Lamb? Maybe. It probably would, but we don't have that foresight going into this video. So that I elected to take CeeDee Lamb because of that. I didn't want to get reckless and try and project Monday Night Football before it happened, but just a few other food for thought points for the people as we're going about this video. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog, where you can get into the game this season playing Pick'em. It's extremely simple. Just pick higher or lower on 2 or more of your favorite players. For example, I'll pick the highers on Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Xavier Worthy. If I played $10 and got all 3 of them right, I would win $60 just by watching football. And that's the beauty of Pick'em. You can track your picks and your wins while you enjoy the game. Now, if you're not on Underdog yet, scan the QR code on your screen or use our code FELLAS when you sign up, because new customers will get $50 in bonus funds when you play your first $5 on the app. Plus, Underdog will give you a free pick to use in your first entry. Again, that's code FELLAS over on Underdog. Now let's get you back to the rest of the show. Before we keep it moving along here, Ty, I am curious by the end of this video what the people's order is for their top 15 down in the comments as well. So let us know how your top 15 compares to ours. That's always something I'm just fascinated to see how the people are perceiving value on certain players based on what we're perceiving as well. So leave a comment down below with what your order is and see how it shakes out in comparison to ours at the end of the video. 8th player off the board for me is going to be Josh Jacobs here. I know it was a slow start to the season. You drafted him RB10 and you're like, I'm getting like RB15 production. He's not killing me based on where I drafted him, but I also drafted him here hoping that he could be like a top 7 guy. But now over his last 3 performances, he has given you finishes of RB2, RB5, RB4. He's averaging 25.8 points per game in that span. I know the 2 touchdowns per game that he's been averaging obviously won't hold up, but that's also the upside that you're getting in this explosive Green Bay Packers offense that's going to find themselves with plenty of scoring opportunities week in and week out. You even look at the receiving work since week 4. 9 targets, 4 targets, 5 targets in 3 of his last 5 or 4 games, So I think Josh Jacobs week in and week out is someone who we like continuously rank in like a borderline top 7 option, RB7, RB6. But moving forward, I seriously wonder if he's a guy that we should be considering ranking as like a top 5 option week in and week out. Oh, and is that a frustration or is that no, it's a frustration. You're rubbing your face as if you're like, oh, get out of here with this nonsense.
No, it's because
that was not a fist celebration in the sky. That was oh my brother in Christ, what are you saying?
Oh no, it's because you threw in a 6-7 joke. Running back 6, running back 7, 6-7. You did
I don't brain rot like that. I brain rot with rigatoni pasta from Marcus instead. I don't do 6-7. I don't do that garbage.
You did well. You just did, whether you liked it or not, whether you tried to or not.
State of South Carolina. That's what I'm doing instead.
Oh man, no. I'll just say, like, I completely agree with you on Josh Jacobs. What the most underrated part of like the second half of 2024 for Josh Jacobs was the games where we got the sprinkle of like 4 catches, right, for like 30 yards. That separated him, obviously, plus all the goal line work that he was getting. That's what separated him from the rest of the pack. And we're kind of getting that again this year. So
yeah,
I really think it is as straightforward as that. Is like, hey, this Green Bay offense is still one of the better units in the league. They're kind of going through Josh Jacobs when they get into the red zone. So he's getting a ton of high value touches. So I'm trusting the process. I'm trusting that Matt LaFleur is going to keep this part of his offense consistent. We'll see what he does with the other pass catchers. But if there's one piece of this offense that I'm expecting to kind of maintain the usage throughout the year, it's Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, RB6 in usage as well, or across his last 3 games. We saw this last year. Slow start to the season. You're like, oh man, really? Can we get some higher value usage out of Josh Jacobs here? And it just took till the second half of the season to get. And I think, still a little bit of a slow start, but now, again, weeks 4 through 7 here, you're finally starting to see more of that. Another running back off the board here for you. Another Detroit Lion here. Rolling with Jahmyr Gibbs.
Going with Gibbs here. I found this really interesting. I wanted to compare the first 6 games from last year to this year for Jahmyr Gibbs. Here's what I found. Last year, through 6 games, 66 rushing attempts, 14 receptions on 18 targets, 4 total touchdowns. He was the running back 10 in points per game. This year, for Jahmyr Gibbs, 87 rushing attempts, 23 receptions on 25 targets, 5 total touchdowns. and he's still the running back 10 in points per game. And it's nearly identical. It's like 15.3 last year and 15.2 or something this year. Like, it's nearly identical. So it's like, what the heck? Like, we're getting what we wanted with Gibbs. So we wanted majority of the rushing work to start going his way over instead of giving, a consistent 11, 12, 13 carries to David Montgomery. That's what we're getting. We're getting more receiving work for Jahmyr Gibbs. Touchdowns are the same. So what's happening here? And ultimately, there's just been a slight dip in efficiency. It's understandable. This Detroit offensive line is kind of revamped, is kind of retooling here. So you went from 5.3 yards per carry last year to 4.5 this year. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it's enough. Plus other players exceeding their expectations. You kind of get what you've gotten with Gibbs so far this year. That could make this feel too low. I could understand if people would make the argument like,
this is right.
I would argue this is right as well. People may say that Gibbs should be higher, again, because it is, Jahmyr Gibbs with increased volume and touches and all that stuff. If I was to make an argument as to why this feels too low, it's because Jahmyr Gibbs feasts in the second half of the year.
Yes.
So if you knew that the second half of the year was going to be top 3 at the position, finish, then I would concede to say that, like, yeah, Gibbs should be higher. But if you're saying that Gibbs should be higher based on what we have seen so far this year, I think this is about right at that point.
Right. And that's where this whole exercise gets very murky, is how do you balance what we've seen so far versus what we project the rest of the season? Could Jahmyr Gibbs absolutely be a smash over the second half of the season? Absolutely. He has been the last 2 years. Which I think, do you have more that you want to add on Jahmyr Gibbs, or can we get into the next player here? Because
let's get into it.
Because, again, Ty and I did this little exercise beforehand, and we asked Cameron for feedback just to make sure there wasn't anything like stupid that we were missing beforehand. He goes, I think Jackson Smith and Jigba should be higher. I said, really? He's been phenomenal this year. But Ty, over the back half of the season, whose offenses are you going to be trusting more? Are you going to be trusting a Sam Darnold-led Seahawks offense that can't run the football? Look, all they can do is throw the football, so maybe that's the counterpoint here. Or are you going to trust a Green Bay Packers offense? Are you going to trust a high-octane Detroit Lions offense that can support multiple top 10 fantasy assets? Like, to me, it's simply a bet on the Lions and Packers and the Cowboys offense, for that matter, why I have all of them ranked ahead of JSN rest of season, in my mind.
I agree with this, because I also see this in a sense that, like, we acknowledge.
I do have more I want to share on JSN and like how phenomenal he's been this year. But again, I just want to put this out there because I'm sure some people were expecting JSN probably closer to 5 than they were to 10.
I think, like, this is our way of acknowledging, like, yeah, it's been really, really good for Jackson Smith and Jigba, right? Going into the year, we had our concerns about, like, the depth of the receiver room at this point. And you're like, man, you're going to be asking JSN to be playing outside a lot. Maybe you can capitalize on the opportunities on the inside when he's playing in the slot. But again, like, you've got Sam Darnold at quarterback. How's he going to do without Kevin O'Connell? You had so many questions going into the year, and he's like answered them and exceeded them beyond expectation. So this is, I think, our way of acknowledging, like, it has been good, because you've been getting the volume with Jackson Smith and Jigba. You're getting the downfield shots. It's Nico Collins vibes from last year, where you're like, man, we're getting volume and we're getting the big plays. So, like, there are very few players that get that kind of, what I will just generalize as a workload at the receiver position in fantasy. But what you said is the right question here. Are you going to really trust Seattle's offense when you get to the second half of the year, when we're talking about the Detroits and the Green Bays, the Dallases? That's at least a conversation I can entertain. And We're talking strictly fantasy. We're not talking like actual NFL, because I think that's a very different conversation then too as well. But strictly from a fantasy perspective, I'm trying to not sound doubtful or pessimistic, but I'm realizing, like, it is coming across that way. And I want to just reassure people, like, Jason is phenomenal. He's still a first round pick in a redraft here.
Yeah.
But there are these things that you have to consider when you're in your first round draft pick.
Yeah, and you touched on a lot of my notes, so I'll try and comb through what I have left. I also want to clarify. It's not that we didn't think JSN couldn't play on the outside. We both know. No, you and I both knew he could play on the outside. It was just a matter of without DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, what is that actually going to look like when JSN got to feast in the slot majority of the time throughout the start of his career in the league? I mean, the dude is leading the league in receiving yards right now, right? He's running an absolutely stupid 4.61 yards per route. That is a full yard more than Puka Nacua, who's in second place. Like that is a stupid number for yards per route run. This is what happens when you're the primary beneficiary of Clint Kubiak's play action downfield shot offense, right? Wide receiver 1 expected fantasy points per route run. The other thing that I'll name with Puka Nacua here, it's actually not that bad coming out of the bye, right? And who knows what it's going to look like against Houston tonight. I anticipate he struggles a little bit. I don't know. I don't want to project too much before Monday Night Football. That's not being taken into account here. This Texan secondary is legit, man. It hasn't really mattered so far for JSN this year, but again, I digress. You look after the week 8 bye that they have coming up: Washington, Arizona, the Rams, Titans, Vikings. You got Atlanta in there, but then Indianapolis, the Rams, Panthers, 49ers to close out the season. I mean, outside of, you could really say Carolina in week 17, where you're going to get JC Horn. You get L'Jarius Sneed against Tennessee. But those are exploitable secondaries in my mind. Like JSN could find himself on a nice little heater rest of season. Isn't going to be enough to overtake these red hot offenses that typically turn it on over the back half of the season. That's TBD. You can weigh that in however you want. For me, I'm betting on the Cowboys, Lions, Packers to be the better offenses rest of season than the Seattle Seahawks. That's all this is. JSN is going to be top 7 for sure wide receiver rest of season.
Yeah, and maybe the simplest question that you can ask yourself, just look at the 4 other names here: CD, Amon-Ra, Josh Jacobs, Jahmyr Gibbs, and JSN, obviously. Who is the least likely to finish with double-digit touchdowns, total touchdowns, rushing and receiving? Maybe it's a cop-out that the running backs, again, can have both rushing and receiving.
Yeah, right.
So maybe just narrow it down to CD Lamb, Amon-Ra, Jackson Smith, and Jigba.
Yeah,
I would argue it's JSN.
Only 3 through 6 games, and if he catches one on Monday, it'll be 4 through 7. But even then, you're basically averaging 8 or 9 on the season, depending on how you want to split that average. So I get that. I'm kind of with you in that regard as well, but could the yardage and volume just be enough where it makes up for it? TBD. But again, we're splitting hairs. That's all this is. We're splitting hairs as to why JSN is here and not at 6th overall, ahead of an Amon-Ra, ahead of a Josh Jacobs, Jahmyr Gibbs, etc. Let's bring it home with the last 5 players here, Ty. I know we said we do first round. I kind of want to do 15 because I feel like there's a lot of guys that we could slide into this range, and then we'll also make sure to talk about some guys at the very end too, where it's like, okay, fascinating. They didn't make the list. Why aren't they on the list? And we'll kind of hash out some sticking points with them. Devon Achane, next player off the board for you here.
Next player off the board, and I'm not going to sit here and be like, it's Walmart Christian McCaffrey because of the receiving work. But I'm just saying, it's
Walmart for a reason. It's Walmart for a reason.
It's Walmart for a reason. Probably Kmart. Maybe that's the best way to say it.
IKEA?
IKEA? No, let's put some respect on Walmart and IKEA. Maybe. All right, we can do maybe Kmart. Some like Dollar Tree. You know what I'm saying? A little.
I'd rather go Kmart. Dollar. If we were gonna go Dollar Tree, that'd be like, I don't even know.
Let's not go down that path. Let's save ourselves here. So, honestly, the reason why Achane is all the way down here, and maybe the argument is that, like, well,
Dollar Tree would be like James White. Sorry, I just.
Oh, geez, we don't know. We didn't.
Sorry, it just hit me. I'm like, it's James White, obviously.
We don't need to bring up the legend that is James White. That is. Oh, this is we're getting derailed here.
The 20 teens James White. Go ahead. Sorry. That just hit me. I had to let it out.
I feel like a lot of people, like, there's an argument for Achane to be lower here because he's a member of the Miami Dolphins and it's been an absolute disaster so far for Miami. But the reason why I'm still putting him up here is because at the running back position, this is the playmaker. Even when you had Tyreek Hill healthy, it was Devon Achane as the playmaker here. He was the running back 8 in usage when Tyreek Hill was healthy. After, he's now the running back 6 in usage. So Devon Achane, yes, in what is a not so, fantasy friendly situation here in Miami, because you got Tua, you got you whatever is going on between the walls, inside the walls in Miami needs to be put in a 30 for 30 documentary, because that would that would be fun to watch. But because Devon Achane is a big play threat regardless of who's healthy and who's not, because of the receiving work that he's still getting here, albeit inconsistent, but still getting really, really impressive receiving numbers. Like, we could walk away from games with 8 catches, 7 catches, 6 catches. The thing that will hold him back is touchdowns. But that's ultimately why he's at the end of the first. Maybe you could put him at the beginning of the second. It's because of the touchdowns. But for a playmaker like Devon Achane, who is being utilized for his speed, I feel like this is still the right spot for Devon Achane.
I saw some articles suggesting you could sit Devon Achane against the Browns last week, and I'm just like,
I saw that too, and I was like, what are we talking about?
You're missing the most valuable part of Devon Achane's game, which is his receiving work when Tyreek Hill is gone. And even with Tyreek Hill in the lineup, right? You talked about the usage. It goes up without Tyreek Hill. I don't care if it's a bad defense. You don't ever consider sitting Devon Achane. So, yeah, I mean, you bring Devon Achane down a peg. This is about where he was going in your home leagues as well. So really, like, we're not too far off here. We're basically just inserting Devon Achane in the same spot, because sure, it's not the elite RB1 overall that we were hoping for, where, in this exercise we were hoping we'd be taking him, top 5 like we were with the JTs, the CMCs, and the Bijans. But hey, man, look, if the volume is going to get him to RB6 usage, that's probably where he's going to be rest of season, because this Dolphins offense isn't good enough to elevate him to that elite status yet. He's a perfectly fine asset that should be started week in, week out. He's never going to lose you a week unless if he leaves the game early due to injury. That's literally the only way Devon Achane can lose you a week based on the volume that he's getting. Speaking of volume, people might not associate volume with James Cook outright, but like I'm fascinated to see how the Bills are using this backfield this year. James Cook did score in 4 straight games to start the season. That's the number one thing we're all talking about in terms of regression for him this year. Finished as the RB4, 2, 7, and 10 in those games. He's also had 4 games with 85 plus yards on the ground, and 3 of those have actually been 100 plus yard games, which, hey, hello, you love to see that out of a efficient James Cook. And simply, like, I can keep this one really simple. This Bills offense is going to continue to be more than good enough to support James Cook as the primary ball carrier, because he's clearly the bell cow for this offense. The number that baffled me, I went and looked at this. Ty Johnson and Ray Davis have combined for only 24 carries this year. Between the two of them, only 24 carries. James Cook nearly hit that in one game against New Orleans this year, right? Like, James Cook is just going to, he's going to be a volume when the Bills are in scoring position. It's him or Josh Allen around the goal line, or one of the tight ends, God forbid. But this is where James Cook belongs. It's just a very plain and simple. He's a top 10 running back. It's nothing sexy. It's nothing flashy. He's not going to be RB1 overall, but he's a top 10 play every single week.
Every single week. I remember us having plenty of conversations about the regression that we were expecting for James Cook in the touchdown department, because partially we were expecting a little more Ray Davis in this offense.
Yes.
Does that, I mean, call us absolutely stupid and crazy for thinking that, but that was a very real thing a couple months ago. James Cook has kind of proven to everybody, like, no, like, he might just be the best skill player on this Buffalo Bills team. He might be the best offensive player outside of Josh Allen on this Buffalo team. So, and it's not like they've gone away from James Cook. That's the other part of this. Those 2 bad games against Atlanta and New England, you're like, those are not great. But it's not because, like, they started giving more work to Ray Davis or Ty Johnson. Like, James Cook is still going to get his in this Buffalo offense. So the question that you need to ask yourself, and I know I'm making this very much like future focused, do you think the Buffalo Bills are really good at offense?
Yeah, right.
If you say yes, James Cook should be a top 12 player in a redo draft.
If also yes, right? There's no here, right? The Bills are going to be a good offense rest of the season. I will say this, though. The one thing you can knock James Cook on is his lack of usage in the receiving game this year. Only 14 targets on the year for James Cook. Caught 12 of them for 89 yards, but you're not getting Devon Achane level receiving work. Now, you're getting better rushing usage out of James Cook than you are Devon Achane, but to me, the receiving game is what can take James Cook from 8.7 points against Atlanta, where he went 17 for 87, had a very good outing on the ground, but he didn't score a touchdown and he didn't catch any passes. You're stuck at 8.7 then. Typically in the past, you're like, okay, I can get 2-3 receptions and another 15 yards, and I can get anywhere from like a 3 to 5 point boost in the receiving game from James Cook. To me, that would be the difference in bumping him from the 12th overall player to, again, going up and potentially knocking on the door with the Josh Jacobs of the world. I mean, 26, 19, 21 points in half PPR formats in those games against the Saints, Dolphins, and Jets. He has the capability of doing it, but again, 15 for 49, no targets, no receptions, no touchdowns, 4.9 points. 17 for 87, no touchdowns, no receptions, 8.7 points. Like, I want to see a little bit more consistency. You at least got 3 for 18, 3 for 10 against New Orleans and Miami as well. So that's the one knock I'll put on James Cook. But again, I think outlook rest of season, top 10 running back, locked and loaded. All right, let's bring it home here, Ty. 3 more left in the top 15. This is where I think it does get tricky. I told you when we did this exercise, I'll be honest, I didn't have anybody. I was like completely sold on my list after James Cook. You went Justin Jefferson here. Tell the people why.
If you knew that Kevin O'Connell would experiment a little bit with trying to be a more balanced offense, but eventually give way to his old habits, there's a reason why they say that old habits die hard. Because
Teamer never changes its stripes.
This is what the pro Justin Jefferson case was at the beginning of the year. And this is what we've seen the last 3 weeks with Kevin O'Connell, with Carson Wentz under center. Now it's a completely different story. We will need to reassess that's the weird thing about this situation. I don't know if I can say when. I feel like it's more of an if. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm
just scary with this.
It's scary. Maybe I'm overthinking it.
20 could have a ton of different names here.
Correct. And I cannot wait for the reaction when we go over some of the names that we left off. Let me just clarify some of the names that we left off were just outside of the top 15. It wasn't like
literally
like literally 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, right? So the reason why I'm still giving the edge to Justin Jefferson is because he is the best player on the Vikings. He is the best wide receiver in the league. And when you know Kevin O'Connell and how he's tried to get touches to Justin Jefferson at all costs, Justin Jefferson is still a really good fantasy asset. The reason why he's not in the top 12 is because of the inconsistencies that you would get because of the quarterback situation this year. Let's just look at the last 3 games. 11 targets against Pittsburgh, 11 targets against Cleveland, at least 15 points in both of those games. Just 10 against Philadelphia. Had a touchdown, and it got poked out by Cooper DeJean. If he catches that, we are right back up there at 16, 17 points. So I know it's been ugly around Justin Jefferson, but if there's a bright spot in this Vikings offense so far this year, it is Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, 5-game drought without a touchdown. That was going to be the one thing I brought up if you didn't, was, oh goodness, as I nearly busted my elbow on my office chair. Yeah, I mean, for 5 straight games, 75 plus yards, right? Not a single touchdown in those games. You add a touchdown to any of those, and you're like, all right, I'm getting a 15 point per game wide receiver. You get 21, 22 against Cleveland. You're getting 23, 24 against Pittsburgh. You add a score in any of these games, and you're feeling so much better about Justin Jefferson. And those have to bounce back. It's not that the Minnesota Vikings aren't putting up points. They're very slow to put up points in these games, I might add. It is not coming hot and heavy in the first quarter like it was last year. We're starting to get back to 2023 habits of the Vikings, where everything just starts molasses slow, and finally they turn it on when they need to. But again, I think Justin Jefferson is a fine pick here. I think some people might have some gripes with some of the names that we left off.
Oh, they absolutely will.
One gripe in particular with the rest of this list. I think there's one player in particular that, especially now that we know that he's active for Monday Night Football. Spoiler alert. I didn't think he was going to be active for Monday Night Football as of this video. And we literally got the news right before we started this video that he was going to, actually, it was even during the video that we got news that he was going to be active. It was while we're recording. So I digress. Justin Jefferson's a fine choice. I think people will really be mad that I put Drake London here. This is a bet on upside. That's all this is. This is a bet on him potentially taking that elite echelon leap to be in the same range as Jackson Smith and Jigba, right? To put him in that conversation by end of season, because we've seen it. We've seen what happens when this offense literally flows through Drake London. 10 targets, 8 catches for 110 yards against Washington and a score before the bye, 21 fantasy points to wide receiver 6. 16 targets against the Buffalo Bills, 10 catches, 158 in the score, wide receiver 2 overall on the week. Still got 10 targets, only caught 4 of them though against San Francisco on Sunday Night Football, no score. Obviously, not as great of a performance then, but you've got a fine stretch coming up here. You've got Miami, New England with Christian Gonzalez might be a little bit of a sticking point. Indianapolis is fine. New Orleans, you get Seattle in the mix too, who's been struggling recently, albeit their secondary might be healthier come end of season. But look, when this offense funnels through Drake London, when they get him in the slot more, again, friends over at Hayden and Josh over at the Underdog Football Show, they pointed this out. When Drake London gets in the slot and he's getting these easier looks, he's putting up fantasy points galore. So I just really hope that this offense can quit trying to get Darnell Mooney involved. And remember that Drake London is their alpha. Bijan Robinson is their alpha. And shoot, I would rather get Kyle Pitts more involved than Darnell Mooney. And he has been more involved than Darnell Mooney as of recent. But Darnell Mooney just came back. You get what I'm trying to say. Kyle Pitts was plenty involved against San Francisco. But this is a bet on Drake London turning into the player JSN is by season's end. That's all this is.
Wide receiver 7 in usage this year. So yes, have the fantasy the performances matched up with that every single week? No. But this is essentially a bet for me, like you said, with the ceiling. But it's a bet also that the usage is going to continue here. Because again, if it's not Bijan Robinson in this Atlanta offense, it is Drake London. And that's a question that you got to ask about some of the receivers that we left outside of the top 15 of just like, sure, they may be the guy in worse offenses, or they could be really good in a really good offense, but there's other mouths to feed. So I understand. I am behind the Drake London early second round redo pick here, because this is what we were banking on at draft time. And I think disappointing that we're getting, games of 4 and 6 points, but these are just kind of the ups and downs that you were pretty much taking on with Drake London at the beginning of the year. You can't punish him again for the down games when, again, this is what we were expecting at the beginning of the year.
Yeah. Again, it's just a bet on the usage sticking in the fantasy point in the fantasy performances aligning with that usage come seasons. And wrap it out. Last player in the top 15. Again, another player that I think you can make a very strong case for here. Javonte Williams, Dallas Cowboys, clear RB1 in Dallas right now.
Clear. And like what we were saying with CeeDee Lamb, this offense is good enough to support so many people because they play fast enough. They score a lot. That just leads to fantasy points for a lot of players. For Javonte Williams, I feel like I need to clarify this. This will be absurdly early if you remember where he was going in drafts. But let's not forget at the beginning of the year, we were getting reports that Jaden Blue, that Miles Sanders was going to be a thing, that this was not going to be a Javonte Williams backfield. And what we've gotten so far this year is a Javonte Williams backfield, and he's been one of the most efficient guys on the year and the most productive guys at the position this year. So again, if you knew this was going to be Javonte Williams' backfield, and if you knew that Dallas's offense was going to be one of the top fantasy offenses, why would you not take the chance of Javonte then at this point in the draft? Yes, it would have been a bit risky just knowing that, we've had the injury history, new team, all that kind of stuff. But he's proven it so far through 7 games. And again, for what we were saying about CeeDee Lamb in this Dallas offense, we're not really expecting a whole lot to regress here at all, sure, maybe they're closer to 5 than they are to 1. But even at that, like, there's still going to be some really, really good games, and Javonte Williams should continue to find the end zone then.
If you knew Javonte Williams was going to be the RB5 in expected fantasy points per game to start the season, you would not have been drafting him as the RB40. You would have been drafting him. I'm not saying you would have been drafting him as a top 10 running back. You might have said, yeah, usage, but what's that generating, right? If he's expected that many points, what's the actual generation of those points? Or the manifestation of those points, excuse me. The reality is that you've been getting a top 10 running back so far in Javonte Williams. In an offense we've already talked about is just going to be providing you points week in and week out with how many they'll be chasing each and every single week. So I don't hate the Javonte Williams pick here. A few names that we did snub, we want to make sure we cover at least a handful of them. So before we do, again, let us know down below your top 15, how it compares with ours. But if you want more fantasy content like this as well, Trade Targets sits every single week. We're going to do some rest of season rankings coming up as well. Some second half league winners. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn the notification bell as well, so you know when all of our newest content is up. We also go live on Sunday mornings as well to help set your lineups before each week kicks off. 4 names that we left off here, Ty, that I think people might have questions about. I have them in an order on my screen. I want to start with Emeka Egbuka, though, because I think he's the one that people are going to have the biggest problem with, not being on this list, especially if he's going to be playing in Monday Night Football. The news that we got literally while we're recording this. I don't know if would it change anything for you now that you know Emeka Egbuka is playing tonight? Let's start there. It wouldn't change anything for you.
No.
I don't think it would change anything for me either, but he would have been my next pick. He would have been my next pick. I almost debated switching out of Drake London for Emeka Egbuka. And part of me wonders if I still should, but I think Emeka Egbuka would have been the next player on my list.
I don't think so. I think Egbuka probably would have been in the next like 3 picks. Maybe I play it safe and say it's somewhere within the next 5 picks outside of the top 15. And I want to say, yes, like I'll acknowledge, like, Emeka Egbuka has looked really good this year, and it has come through in fantasy with the touchdowns and stuff. But it's okay to admit when somebody has over-exceeded expectations. Because if you were drafting Emeka Egbuka, you knew you were playing with Mike Evans. You knew you were playing with Bucky Irving. Like, there is...
But you also know through the first 7 weeks, that he's been phenomenal. And that he was going to be playing without Mike Evans for a handful of games.
So
would that not inflate his value even more? Knowing that you've been getting a top 7 wide receiver through the first 7 weeks?
Maybe we took the easy
Does that
way
not
out
matter?
then. Well, so Emeka Egbuka is the most nuanced here, because we can go, what if this? Sure. What if that? What if this? What if this? What if this? And maybe we're taking the easy way out by keeping him outside of the top 15. But I think if we were realistically setting up a draft board, I don't know if I would still take Emeka in the top 15, because you had all of these things even after this point, right? You would still have the Mike Evans question. You would still have the Bucky Irving thing. Like, yes, it's been really, really good through the first 7 weeks, but fantasy football is more than just the first 7 weeks. And it's really just been 6 games, because they haven't even played yet in week 7. Like, we're doing this before Monday Night Football for, I know we've said this for like what it feels like the 5th or 6th time at this point.
Still important to reiterate.
There is more to this season than just the first 7 games, right? And so, yes, it's been great. But if we were just drafting players based on the first 7 games, you would not have seen a CeeDee Lamb. You would not have seen a Justin Jefferson. You would not have seen a Drake London. Like, there is more to the fantasy season than just what happened on the front end. I'm expecting a bit of regression here for Emeka Egbuka. We're talking about a wide receiver 3 in expected fantasy points. He's a wide receiver 36 in expected fantasy points, and he's exceeding that because of the touchdowns. So I'm not going to sit here and say that he's been over efficient. Has he exceeded expectations? Yes, there's nothing wrong with admitting that. But I'm expecting regression as this Tampa offense gets healthier now. You get Mike Evans back in the fold. You get Bucky Irving back in the fold. I'm not expecting the same levels of upside and ceiling for Emeka Egbuka every single week now because everything is coming back to normal in this Tampa offense.
Let me also contextualize this to a much more simple way of putting it, saying that if we were to redraft Emeka Egbuka and he were the next wide receiver off the board, that'd be the wide receiver 9.
Yes.
That's still pretty good, man.
It's really good.
Really freaking good. So that is not to say I am OUT on Emeka Egbuka. You do look, it does have finishes as a wide receiver 32 and 26. He was well on his way. Again, I'm going to exclude San Francisco, but still 3 top 10 finishes in his first 5 games is nothing to slouch at either. So could you slot him in ahead of a Drake London, a Javonte Williams, Justin Jefferson, maybe? Look, if somebody wants to do that, they're in their own right to do that. For me, I think Emeka is 8 or 9 rest of season. And that's like phenomenal because Emeka Egbuka has been phenomenal. Okay, we took a really long time in Emeka Egbuka. I mostly just want to say Saquon Barkley isn't on this list. Literally the number 1 overall player drafted this year, him and Jamar Chase. It was a tie between the two. Saquon started to fall a little bit come draft time, but I think notable that he's not on this list. He hasn't killed you, but even against Minnesota last week, wasn't a great game for Saquon. Is he still top 10 rest of the season? That's the only thing I want you to answer.
Fringe. Like he's probably like right at 10, if I'm honest. Because if you knew that Philly would not be able to run the ball as well as they did last year, which like there will be, I literally a co-host on this podcast was like, I was talking about regression all off season long. This isn't about regression. I've heard people say that like Saquon's play has regressed. I don't think you can say that without acknowledging that the offensive line has not been as good.
Yep.
So if you knew that at the beginning of the year, I think it would have made sense to have Saquon at this spot. The reason why he's maybe not even lower, because again, like the last couple weeks have been really, really bad, is because if there's one offense that I want to believe in that can turn it around, it's Philly. So yeah, maybe that's that's really stupid of me that's not the right way to look at it, or that's not the right offense to take that kind of chance on. But I see the playmakers. I'm just like, man, because I know if they turn it around, they're pretty much league winners then at that point, second half of the year.
Hey, who knows? Could be week 8 against the Giants. It was the AJ Brown show last time against the Giants. Could be Saquon Barkley this week finally against the Giants. Him or Judkins rest of season. He's the other name that I think Judkins could have slid in ahead of Javonte.
Honestly, I think I'm going to take Judkins rest of the year.
Worst offense. I don't blame anyone for taking Judkins. It's a balance of like, what are you going to get from volume? It's not like Saquon's been all that efficient either. But Judkins is going to get the volume. No questions asked about that. So, like, again, food for thought, right? I know some people could be like, Judkins, Scadaboo should probably be on this list too, because Cam Scadaboo, hello, he's been phenomenal. People are probably like, really, you're not going to talk about Cam Scadaboo? Look, I get it. Like I said, 13 through 20, you could have 12 different players in here probably, and I wouldn't hate anybody for having that order.
Agreed. I think Judkins and Saquon are going to be like back-to-back in rest of the season rankings for me.
8, 9, 9.
It might just be a coin flip on the day.
Cam Scadaboo is the other one in that mix between 8 to 10. That you're like, you fall in here somewhere, Cam Scadaboo.
Yes.
Last one, Rashee Rice. I know people are going to find it hypocritical, maybe, that I'm willing to take CeeDee Lamb as a top 6 player for missing 4 games, yet Rashee Rice misses the first 6 games. And I'm not willing to take him, even though he gave you a phenomenal 7 catches, 10 targets game this last week against the Las Vegas Raiders. If I am not mistaken, he was a top. Oh boy, I'm going to pull this up in front of me before I say something stupid. He indeed was a top 10 performer on the week. I almost said top 5. So I'm glad I didn't say top 5. Mm-hmm. I cannot reasonably take a player who I know is going to miss 6 games inside of the top 15 picks. That's it. That's all it is. 3rd round, sign me up. Mm-hmm. Top 15 picks, I can't do that. Not 6 of the first 7. That's too many.
Yes. Yep. And this is another one where recency bias may kind of take over here for a lot of people. Let's just call a spade here. Yes, the 10 targets were great. He averaged 6 yards on his catches.
Wow, two little shovel passes near the goal line here to make sure he got in. So it factors in. That's going to bring it down a bit. But.
Right. Like I'm not, so I don't want to like completely dismiss the first game, but I don't think that's an accurate representation of what we can get the rest of the year with Rashee Rice. Now, on the flip side, like if you knew that this Kansas City offense was going to be as, playing, if they were going to be playing as good as they are right now when Rashee Rice was coming back, sure, that can kind of swing the pendulum back a little bit. But like I said, I hope people can look at this with a clear lens and go like, it was a guaranteed 6 games. In a top 15 pick, missing 6 games, it's a really, really tall, or it's a lot to overcome in that missed time then. So don't let the most recent game fool you. I think there's more to unfold here with the Rashee Rice, outlook here.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, if we're going to continue getting kind of these design touches here in the red zone, I'm not going to be mad. I can be mad.
Rashee Rice, if we're doing rest of season rankings, Rashee Rice is the top 7 wide receiver rest of season. No question. It's the top 7 wide receiver.
Argument for 5. There's an argument for 5.
I mean, there's an argument for 5, right? So no question, but we're factoring in the first 6-7 weeks into this as well. People weren't even willing to do that with Jonathan Taylor's injury and holdout back when he was wanting a contract. They weren't willing to do that for 4 games. So just one of those where I'm like, that was more indefinite. I get it, but I'm not willing to do it 6 games for Rashee Rice. We'll put a pin in it there. We'll be back tomorrow. Ty and Cam will be back tomorrow with some trade targets for you all. We'll all be back together end of the week for some starts and sits as well. We'll have some second half league winners coming up, some rest of season rankings for you all as well. So again, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when all those content pieces are up. Follow our other socials as well. FF Fellas over on Twitter, the FF Fellas over on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook and TikTok. If you are a YouTube person through and through, I get it. I want to respect your loyalties. Fantasy Football Fellas shorts over there. Exclusive content that's not just like a reclip from our show. It's exclusive content that you get over there that you can't find anywhere else. I'm at Lucas Wenzel on X, Camlaw FFF. I'll plug Cam. He's not even here. FFF for Cameron. Tyler_Plath for Ty. See y'all tomorrow. Some buy low, sell high. A little bit more discussion on whether you should be holding some players as well. Deuces.